Good evening to you, Mark Sutt of HurricaneTrack.com here with the client services edition of the seasonal recap broadcast. One more day of the hurricane season. It ends tomorrow, and so I figured we would do this tonight so that people, don't have distractions between Friday night activities and watching this. So the irony, huh? Right? Because we have a huge crowd watching. Anyway, welcome. The season was remarkable. And what I'm going to do is go back and talk about the hurricane season and the stuff that we did. And let's just start at the beginning. A year ago, right now, for those of you that remember that were with us, the Tahoe was non-operational. The engine had failed and gone out in October of 2011, and we worked hard amongst all of us to raise a little over $3,000 to replace that engine. And a local shop here in town took care of that, and they did a remarkable job. We raised the money, and I sold a cargo trailer that I had. Really didn't need it anymore. Mike will tell you, Mike Watkins is watching. It was a behemoth. Better. All good things, right? Things happen for a reason, I guess. So getting rid of the trailer was good. And we replaced the engine, and boy, wait till you see where all that engine took me. The new engine was not brand new. It was a used engine from a salvage Tahoe near Lumberton or somewhere, and it had 82,000 miles on it, the new quote-unquote engine. The Tahoe as a whole, we ended the season with the Tahoe itself, the transmission, all the original equipment except for the engine. The rest of the Tahoe now has over 312,000 miles. So, wow. Amazing. So when I show you, especially once we get past the seasonal aspect of all this, you will be amazed at how far we have come together. And it really has been a journey with us together. And I'll talk more about that towards the end. So let's start at sort of the beginning, if you will. We know that the story begins for this season. We had to get the Tahoe recuperated, and we did that. And I went to the National Hurricane Conference in March, or April, or whatever it was, down in Orlando. That was great. And then we got into April, and then May, and then June. And right at that beginning part of the hurricane season, and I'm kind of skipping around here, this is the June 1st extended range forecast for Atlantic seasonal hurricane activity from Colorado State. And at that point in time, Dr. Phil Klotzbach and William Gray, the two experts out there, they were saying that they foresee a slightly below average season. So they go, if you read it word for word, we foresee slightly below average activity. For the 2012 Atlantic hurricane season, we have increased our forecast slightly from early April due to large amounts of uncertainty in both the phase of ENSO, that's the El Nino, as well as Atlantic basin conditions. We anticipate a below average probability of United States and Caribbean major hurricane landfall. Well, that part certainly came to pass. We haven't had a major landfall in 7 years, and we'll talk about more on that topic later. So they were calling for a below average season, slightly below average. Wow. NOAA, same thing. NOAA predicts basically near normal. So normal, depending on how you look at it, anywhere from 10 named storms to maybe 12 named storms. And 6 hurricanes, maybe 1 or 2, no more than 3 majors, right? And so NOAA, at the end of May, this is May 24th, they were calling for a near normal hurricane season. And so you had the 2 bigger operations there that are widely known. There's others that issued forecasts as well. We don't have time to go through everybody and see what everybody came up with. For the record, I was thinking we would have 13 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 majors. And I was wrong. Everybody was wrong. The season, as you know, and this is a graphic that has come to us from the great Mike Watkins. And I'm going to dial him up now so that we can talk to him about the season. we ended up with 19 named storms and 10 hurricanes, out of which we only had one major hurricane, a Category 3 or higher. So what I'm going to do is get on the phone here with Mr. Watkins and have him talk about sort of the pattern of the season and why you see so many of those tracks. And if you notice that, they're out of the deep tropics. So here to talk about sort of the characteristics of the season and how it was defined, Mr. Mike Watkins on the, what do you call it, the Subway Fresh Take Hotline? Is that what they say on ESPN, Mike and Mike? I guess ours would be the Outback or Chick-fil-A or whatever. Welcome, Mr. Watkins. Yeah, really. So we had an unusual season, didn't we?
We sure did, and not kind of like it. I think even though we kind of saw a weakening El Nino, or relatively weak El Nino start to get going in the Pacific, all indications were at least coming in that we thought that we'd see activity coming out of the deep tropics this year, and we had some activity down there like we do every year. But nothing really made it to hurricane strength except for right at the beginning of the year when we had, the couple tracks into Central America there, but and Mexico. But it's certainly a year where, if you kind of look back on it, I mean, everybody's going to remember Sandy, and certainly that was the story of this year's season for the United States anyway. But all of that activity outside the deep tropics, it was an unusual year to see it all out there. But, that's been the trend mark, I guess, since '06. We've been, with the exception of probably the 2008 season, everything's either been way to the north of where the U.S. would be concerned or way to the south, and the only real exception being Sandy this year.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting to note, and we were talking about this today, that we were in a pattern where the development that did happen, obviously it happened out of the deep tropics, but we were in a situation with Isaac and then Sandy. Luckily they weren't that strong, but they intensified closer to land, and we saw all kinds of intensification out of the deep tropics. Do you know what the reason is? I mean, I think one could point to, vertical instability was low again, but why? Where is that lack of instability in the atmosphere coming from? Can anybody pinpoint that?
Well, this year and '06 and '07 in particular were like this too. We just seemed to have a very hostile upper level winds of the deep tropics, and in that graphic that I made earlier this week and that folks are looking at now, that's all the cumulative forecast points from the National Hurricane Center for all the different storms. So you can see where a lot of these forecasts are bunched together along the hurricane track, and clearly you can see Sandy's track and where Isaac came through the Caribbean and into Cuba. But what stands out, other than, those two storms over, and then obviously Sandy in the Western Caribbean that happened early in the season, all of the tracks, you don't really see them get to yellow, which is the hurricane intensity, until after they come north of 25. And so we saw two things. One of them was up there where Mark's got that circle. Water temperatures were running above normal throughout the year, particularly off the East Coast and right where Sandy went through in particular. But also the upper level winds were more favorable as the storms started to turn north and out of the tropics. And so, when they were down in the deep tropics, you really only see green and blue, which is tropical storm and tropical depression strength down there in the deep tropics. And it wasn't until stuff started to recurve, or even in the case of Michael and a couple of certainly Nadine, you can just see that big squiggly parabola line out there in the East Atlantic. The storms didn't find favorable upper winds until after they got out of the deep tropics. And so, that got me thinking, and we're just, I'm just starting to kind of pour through the individual storm data now. I'm doing a lot on Sandy now, but these kind of seasons almost, to me, become more dangerous than maybe even the storms or the seasons where you have so many things coming out of the deep tropics. I mean, obviously, '04 and '05 were devastating years, but the one thing that almost every one of those storms had in common, with the exception of Charlie, was that they were weakening prior to landfall. If you go back to a year like 1992, which had a similar upper-level profile as this year, a stronger El Nino, but strong wind tropics. I mean, Andrew was sheared apart, down in the deep tropics to the point where they were thinking about not writing advisories, and it was really only until after it got north of 25 and started to head toward the United States that it really intensified. And so, you know, the U.S. is north of 25 degrees north. So, you know, and we were talking about this today, Mark. I wonder if there's, you know, even an 8-9, not a landmark season by any stretch of the imagination, but Hugo intensified as it came in. I wonder if there's some sort of link between the two that we need to look at a little bit more closely.
Yeah, down in the deep tropics, you worry about situations like Dean and Felix that were Category 5s down here near Central America. Certainly your Windward and Leeward Islands issues, but up here, and it even lends credence to the fact that maybe Camille was not a Category 5 at landfall. That's almost blasphemy to say, but story for another day. But it goes to show that, you know, you really do have to look at the quality of what you're getting over the quantity and the atmosphere as a whole. And my question as we go out into time, looking ahead to next year, and then eventually maybe looking in multi-years, you know, that could be a generation away before we have to start looking at 2 or 3 seasons out. But boy, couldn't you really do some mitigation if you knew that a certain pattern was in place for the next couple of years? It showed a lot of hit potential, but I digress. So looking ahead to next year, do we have any signals this far out, not necessarily in November, at the end of November, but maybe come April or whatever, where we could say, all right, so the atmosphere is looking this way, and we might be seeing more deep tropical development as opposed to this development, as you clearly have shown here with this data set, where all the yellows, I mean, it's remarkable, with the exception of the area west of 70 degrees longitude here. You do have more yellows up in here, down deeper, south of 25, which is right there. But in this block, look at all the clustering of yellows in there. That's remarkable. So can we look ahead and try to predict how that might shape out for, like, next season? Where does one look?
Right, and that's the big question. And just to kind of finish that thought, I mean, just looking at the Isaac track there, when you think about where Isaac traversed in the middle of, you know, late August, early September, just south of the Dominican Republic, cut through just over the Cuban coast there, and then, but it never looked as good as it did in terms of structure until it was over Louisiana. I mean, it looked like a hurricane over Louisiana, but until it got there, it looked like this sheer kind of hybrid storm, and that's what all the, other than probably Sandy, that's what all of these storms look like. And so you look toward the things that we know about that affect intensity that we can kind of look at this far out. One of them is, do we think that is there going to be an El Nino or a La Nina or neutral conditions in the eastern and central and western Pacific, equatorial Pacific as we get in next year? And, you know, generally speaking, we don't see Nino happen 2 years in a row, so we've got close to a weak El Nino out there now. So that says, do we expect maybe a neutral environment next year, or maybe even heading into La Nina, which is certainly no guarantee of ice busy season. But you know, that's the first place to look, and the second place is really how warm are the water temperature is going to be. And I still don't think that we're out of the multi-decadal warm Atlantic. The tropics were closer to average than we've seen over the last several years. A little bit more heat out in the eastern Atlantic than we normally see. But, you know, coming out of this season, I mean, the general feeling, at least that I have, is that we're going to be closer to a more traditional deep tropic type of season next year. Of course, there's no guarantees, but and maybe, as you were kind of mentioning earlier, Mark, maybe Sandy is an indicator of that. Because, I mean, and there's some debate. I don't know that we'll ever know for sure if Sandy made it to a Category 3 hurricane or not south of Cuba just before it made landfall. But the structure and the way it looked, and the last information coming from reconnaissance is that it was rapidly intensifying to become possibly a major hurricane. And I think without a doubt, if it hadn't run into the landmass of eastern Cuba, it would have been.
Yeah.
And that could have been a much different story for Bahamas and even the United States East Coast. I mean, in some ways, we were somewhat lucky that it weakened and transitioned and lost its Form 4 as it came in. I don't know that it would have done that if it had been 20 or 30 knots stronger coming out of the Caribbean.
Right. Well, very interesting. You know, a lot of Debate will go on about Sandy. We're going to talk about that later. You're now in the post Office Depot era of your career. Tell us a little bit about Hurricane Analytics. Its name, not quite what people might think it means, but it does have some relation to hurricanes. What are you doing these days, and what's on the plate for your future?
Well, as you know, I've studied, hurricanes are fascinating, especially Atlantic hurricanes, because the Atlantic hurricane basin is the most variable in the world, and it's not even close. I mean, think about the difference, for example, between the 2005 season and the 2006 season, less than a year apart, how different those seasons were. And not only that, but the Atlantic Ocean in general is this big data void region where you get some soundings from Bermuda and aircraft, but for the most part, you have to fill in the blanks with modeling and satellite data. And so I've been doing that in a different way for businesses for the last 20 years, and in the last 10 years in particular, I've been doing predictive modeling and visualizing data for Office Depot. Hurricane Analytics is kind of an extension of that concept where you take this hard to predict thing, a hurricane, and you try to take the principles of that type of analysis and prediction and then apply them to business. But I also hope to keep my toe in the water in terms of the tropics. I've got a couple of small clients now, but and certainly working with you has been great. So at the very least, I'm going to try to take these principles and bring them to business and help small businesses utilize information and data and understand what's happening. But the end goal is to produce a product that can be used by a lot of folks that want to understand and interpret what hurricanes are doing and what they could do by looking through the data like we did with like I did with the 2012 season. So I'm actually pulling in a lot of hurricane data now and working to get that visualized and interpreted and out, and hopefully there's some value there for folks who want to understand what these storms can do. And so I'm really excited, Mark. I'm really enjoying being out of the cubicle and diving into the data like I have, and I just don't see myself ever going back.
Yeah, now you know why I've enjoyed it for 15 years, man. I tell you, innovation and the freedom to be creative and to explore and whatever, you can't beat that. So you've done really good work in just a short amount of time with this mapping and the display of data where people can understand it. And we're very hopeful that we will be able to utilize some of that in the client services site next year with some intensity model graphics that we can use in our updates that will be accessible for people on the site. That would be great to visually display intensity uncertainties and predictions. And Mike's work, I mean, think about it. He's done a lot of stuff for those of you following Hurricane Analytics on Twitter and Facebook. What he's done in just this short amount of time, really, think about where he's going to be in May. He's kind of like the Duke basketball for this year of hurricane prediction and analytics. My little sports. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mark, not the Kansas basketball that I was hoping to see this year. But,
exactly.
They're a young team. We'll see how they do.
You've come out shooting hot, like the Duke basketball team has as well. Well, that's the end of my sports analogy. I'm going to stick to hurricanes. So I'm going to go through the rest, and hopefully you can stay on and on the stream and watch. We appreciate it, and good luck with everything. And thanks for the contributions this year. We got lots of photographs coming up with you inside of them, so you'll see yourself if you continue watching. So thanks, Mike. Anything you want to add before we let you go?
No, just want to thank everybody who's followed along and supported Hurricane Tractor of the years, and particularly this year as I was excited to do the field mission with Isaac and help support things from home here during Sandy, and certainly all the work that you do, Mark, and it's been a pleasure. I just realized today that we've been working together since late 2004, so it's like we're going to be entering our 9th year together next year, which is just insane how fast it's gone by. But none of this would be possible without the folks who support and follow what we do, and glad that you made each of you made a contribution either in terms of your time and certainly to support everything financially, and we wouldn't be able to do it without your help. And so I'm glad to be a part of it again this year, Mark. And yeah, I can't wait for, there's going to be busy next couple of months to get kind of through all the data, but I'm looking forward to not only getting through that, but also really slicing, dicing even some of the data that we've gathered in the field in the past. And there's still data, I think, that we could pull from the Ike mission and the Isaac mission and the data that you captured from Sandy, and then bring that to life for the folks in the client services dream and side of things would be great. So thanks again for listening and watching this year, and I hope to see everybody again early next year.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's Mike Watkins, everybody. Have a good evening, Mike. All right, so Mike, well on his way to really producing some stellar graphics input with data that he knows where to find it. And if you haven't followed him on Twitter or liked his Facebook page, I encourage you to do so. And you can track his progress. I think it'll be really neat to see how far he comes. And again, it's like letting somebody out, giving an artist more than just black and white to work with, or somebody on the piano. They get more than just a couple of notes. Now he can have an entire keyboard or an entire palette of colors, as it were. So let's jump into recapping where we were back in, what is this, May? All right, so we got through the hurricane conference in March, and we know what the seasonal predictions were. Basically, a average to slightly below average season was what most of these experts were calling for. And as Mike pointed out, the season, I think, gave us a hint early on. And he and I always joke when we see a development like this, and we'll start here with Tropical Storm Alberto, that it was May 19th that the first advisory was written. Yes, May 19th, all the way back in May. There it was, out of the deep tropics. And so we always joke that it's nice to see out of the tropics development. We are hurricane trackers, we are hurricane hunters, whatever. We exist in our work to study hurricanes, and without hurricanes, there's absolutely no need for us to do this. So yes, we get excited when there's the potential for a powerful hurricane to hit the United States, and you know this already, not because we enjoy the suffering, but we enjoy the challenge of trying to study it and put our instrumentation out in it, and all that implies. So when you see a development off the southeast coast in the subtropics in May, you immediately have to start to wonder, well, I guess that's the way the season's probably going to go. And so we started out with Alberto on May 19th, and right from the get-go, it was not a real big deal, just an eye-opener. Had a lot of people kind of talking about it, and it made the news, of course, and it hooked a nice quick turn in the forecast was for it to go out to sea. It paralleled the North Carolina coast with very little impact. No big deal. Now, between Alberto and the next named storm, which was, of course, Beryl, I had the opportunity to go to New York City and work to put together a weather station project for PS6 up there, Public School 6, and that was a really neat project. A lot of folks were following my work up there, drove around Manhattan trying to get into the school, and this up on the Upper East Side, not too far from Central Park, and we got it running, and then they had some internet problems, and we're still trying to work on that. The greenhouse that they've got, this is a nice shot of their rooftop. It's a rooftop greenhouse project with a whole bunch of plants, and they even have some turtles up there in a pond, and they got the greenhouse there on the left. And all of this was funded through donations, etc., and fundraising efforts that the school and the project leader, her name is Allison, undertook. And we are going to be working on trying to get that up and running now that they have finally gotten internet into that greenhouse there. They have an office, you can't see it, but there's an office on the back of this greenhouse over here that's closed off, and so they finally ran some internet cables or whatever under all this, and got it wired, ready to go. And so it won't be too long, we'll get that fired up. The weather station's working, and so they can keep an eye on things, but the ability to get it on the internet We just haven't been able to do that yet, but we're getting there. So that was, oh, what was that? The first week of May or so. And then I toured the city with one of our members. His name is Dan. And he took me down to the World Trade Center site. Little did I know that this would be sort of a beacon in the night, if you will, like the bat signal almost. I mean, really, it was, if you saw that, the power went out, but I think that the World Trade Center, One World Trade Center here, the new Freedom Tower, I think they call it, going up now. At this point in time in May, it was the tallest building in New York. It had surpassed the Empire State Building, but I think it stayed on for a little while after that blackout. You ought to YouTube and Google search time-lapse Sandy blackout New York City, something like that, later on, and you can see that. But anyway, he took me down there, and I just thought this was kind of an iconic symbol for what was to come, because as you know, the World Trade Center site flooded from storm surge from Sandy. Quite remarkable. Then, not too long after that, just a couple of weeks later, I was joined by a meteorologist from Mississippi State, Greg Nordstrom. And no, this is not the new hurricane track offices, unfortunately. That would be nice. This is CNN inside of one of their broadcast centers. And I have worked with CNN since 1999, just a few short years after the start of my career. I was very fortunate. Right place, right time, that kind of thing. And so we stopped in to the Atlanta headquarters of CNN as we were en route to Texas. Here's a shot outside CNN Center looking at downtown Atlanta. We were headed to Texas to test the hurricane balloon, Herbie. Little item of trivia here. This building was heavily damaged. It's all fixed now. In 2008, a tornado came right through downtown Atlanta here, and this was all filled with wood covering the window panels for the last couple of years. Every time I'd go to Atlanta and meet with CNN about something, I remember seeing that building covered with these wood panels. It was kind of strange, but anyway, they've repaired that. So on we went towards Texas. We stopped in Bay St. Louis to work with NOAA and their Hurricane Sentinel program to place a test camera system out on one of their Sentinels there in the St. Louis Bay. And this is looking up the 25-foot or so platform, the ladder, the vertical ladder that goes up to the top, and we put the camera up there, and it streamed. You know, they wanted to see how it worked. The idea being that maybe we could place one of these systems out there. You can see the St. Louis Bay Bridge. This is St. Louis Bay out here, and that's the new Highway 90 bridge as I cover it up with telestration. The idea was to put one of these systems out there in the event of a hurricane. And the day we were there, it was about 88 degrees, 90 degrees. Pretty flat calm on the water. You can see it's not too choppy. And, you know, we kind of joked, well, I wonder when that'll be. It probably won't be too long the way it is around the Gulf Coast. It seems they have a hurricane, you know, every couple of years in late times. And, you know, since 04, 05, really since the whole modern era in 1995 started, hurricanes in this area have been a regular feature. So we tested that. That worked fine, and we were kind of ready to go in case there was one coming. Then we went on to Texas. And there's a nice shot of Herbie, version 1, and it's got the GoPro cameras on there. We had great cooperation and help and support from several people out there, including Carrie and a gentleman named David who lives in Houston, as Carrie does. And then we went up to a ranch owned by Ray Fields, and not too far from Buffalo, Texas. And he let us use his big open ranch. He uses it as an airstrip as well. And we were able to launch this thing. After the first attempt, we were a little too heavy. We had to take the radio equipment out, and then we got everything bundled up and started inflating and ready to go. And it launched. There's Carrie holding on to stuff. You got to really be careful with these things. You know, the idea, of course, was to build a payload, and you can see the Hurricane Herbie payload right there. and it's got the GoPro cameras on the outside, and then inside of it is GPS recording equipment, and you send all of that up into the atmosphere through this weather balloon. And we wanted to do it in the eye of a hurricane, so we had to test it and make sure stuff worked. And once we got through the first failed launch attempt, where it just kind of bounced along the ground because it was too heavy, we were ready to go. And you can just make of this what you want. 3 donkeys, yeah. 3 of them looking at 3 of them, right? Funny, funny, funny. You could put that on a caption. You name the caption. But all seriousness, we launched it. Great team effort. Greg was there. Carrie's support, Ray, David. There was a TV crew from Waco, Texas covering it. And it went up, and it went to at least 94,000 feet, maybe higher. It burst, it fell down, and we were able to track it through the G1 that Paul Bowman had provided. Paul, a longtime friend of mine from getting a long time now, met him in 05. He gave us a G1 phone, an Android phone, and then we had our spot locator on there, the satellite-based tracking, and it didn't take too long to find it. A little tough. We knew where it was just hard to get to it. Luckily, we chose Texas, which has more fields than trees in the part of Texas that we were. And it was very successful. We were very, very excited, and I was pleased because, you know, to toot my own horn, that design of that box, let me go back a couple, that was my design. You know, I'm not an engineer, you know, and it worked. Nothing broke, nothing was destroyed, you name it. And I was very relieved, let me tell you, because I've had some ideas, you know, as a kid or whatever, that my parents will tell you didn't quite work out so well. And so it was good to see that this one did. And so we were all set and ready to launch it in the eye of a hurricane. And there's the group. I took a picture of them. There's David on the left. You know him on Storm 2K as VB Hutex. David Van Bergen from Houston, Texas. There's Greg Nordstrom. And there's Carrie, who is on the chat right here. And his expertise in the amateur radio side of things with the APRS unit, which we would later try out in another attempt, has really proved invaluable. And we're looking forward to doing this in the eye of a hurricane, and it's going to be extraordinary. And you can see the field back here, nice and open. There was some water, and it worked really well. And we were ready. So then, one nice shot here. Beautiful sunset going down behind the Tahoe. There is the open Herbie container with all the equipment inside. Nothing was damaged. That thing fell with a parachute from 94,000 feet at least to the earth, and it just kind of smushed the bottom of the cooler a little bit, a little crinkle. And that's it. That's pretty darn remarkable for somebody who has never done this before. Wow. So I give myself and my team a nice round of applause for that. It was a great effort, and they'll tell you, Carrie and Paul and Greg, and Tim too, it was Tim Millar's idea to even do this late July of last year. We were talking about flying an airplane in the eye of a hurricane. He said, why not just launch a balloon? So we ran with that idea. He gave us the inception, so to speak. So anyway, great team effort. All the time spent talking on the phone to the guys about what if this, what if that. And you know, there's no CAD drawings, there's no computer modeling. We just did it with, you know, what they call true grit, and we accomplished it. So very happy. Now we just need to do it in a hurricane. So on the way back from that was Beryl, and it was a tropical storm formed off the southeast coast, and there was high pressure up here that forced it back towards the Florida peninsula and right towards Jacksonville. Very, very difficult to hit Jacksonville with a tropical cyclone head on. You know, you think about it, most of them come up out of the deep tropics, if they do that, and they curve into the eastern U.S. or they go across Florida. You know, it's just real hard, even if they parallel the coast. That's not quite the same thing. And certainly folks in New Jersey found out about that. You think about Irene last year that went up like this, you know, paralleling the coast. Beryl here came in and perpendicular to the coast. And we got to stop in. Greg was still with me at this point. Here's a few shots. This is on I-10, looking towards the low cumulus field from an otherwise very dry environment. That was the low cumulus field from the increasing instability that Beryl was causing to our east. As we got closer, that instability increased. The clouds thickened. I mean, this is so neat to me. It's such a mundane picture overall, but to me it has huge value because here's your low cloud deck right here. There's your cumulonimbus field starting to grow, showing upward motion in the atmosphere. And then here's your cirrus outflow. I mean, that's perfect. It's textbook what you're looking for. Tornado chasers know what to look for. They joked about it in Twister about smelling the dirt. Well, when Greg and I saw this, and I remember how excited I was, pointing out to him, look at the low cloud deck. There's your low-level humidity. There's your mid-level moisture, and it's all upwelling into the atmosphere, if you will, the upward motion. And then there's your cirrus outflow, well established. This thing is intensifying. And it's sure as heck, that's what it did. Just an iPhone shot of the laptop. And you can see it had good banding features and a nice center of circulation. And this thing increased to 70 miles per hour, almost became a hurricane. And we measured winds to 58 miles per hour in a gust near Fernandina Beach area, near where Sherry, if I can get my thoughts straight. I'm just thinking about the 7,000 pictures I still have to show, and I've only got about 20 minutes left until 6 kids come in the house. Sherry, one of our members down in Florida, we got to stop in and see her, and boy, the oak tree damage down there, and just the small pieces of debris, and the rainfall, and the relentlessness of it. I'm sure she will never forget that. But what an opportunity. We were able to stop in and see her and say hello at her house, one of our clients and one of our big supporters. So, wow, stuff like that, it really means a lot to us. Just a shot, it's so hard to show you what it really feels like. And you can't. Even if I shot it in IMAX, and we all went to the IMAX theater to watch, it still wouldn't do it justice. But, it's just a tropical storm. But it was raging out here. I say raging, I mean, it was full on. It was a good, solid tropical storm, shaking the Tahoe around, and it had that curtain of rain that was going on. And, that was like, wow. So we're up to the B storm, and it wasn't even June yet. Very interesting. So, we move on. Hurricane Chris. June 21st. That became the first hurricane of the season. And it developed and stayed way out here. Folks, this is 40 degrees north latitude. I mean, Mike, spot on about this stuff. Look at that. A hurricane developing out here north of 40 degrees. That's where we got our first hurricane. That is really, really unusual, but it happened. Then there was Debbie. Debbie was the season's first GFS Euro duel. The Euro is very insistent on high pressure building up over the southeast U.S. and Debbie coming up and then getting turned underneath that high. Remember the clockwise flow around the high pressure areas in the northern hemisphere, and it was going to shove it towards southeast Louisiana as a hurricane. And this is the time of June when CNN International, as part of their fellowship project, had asked me to help them out with their balloon launch that they wanted to do as part of a story in their year-end project that they do with their fellows that come in from all over the world, and they do projects and studying and whatever and collaboration, and they have a little end-of-the-year project. And they wanted me to help out with the balloon a balloon launch down in Peachtree City. So Carrie was going to come up from Texas to put an APRS system in it and assist with everything. And we had Debbie down there. I was like, ugh, that's not good. So luckily the forecast changed. Look at that. Just the next advisory. In fact, let me go back to that. This is advisory number 5. That's advisory number 6. I mean, what happened? Really, let's do it one more time. There's advisory number 5, hurricane warnings for southeast Louisiana, tropical storm warnings actually. But then, and this is what time? So 11 o'clock Eastern time. And then at 5 o'clock Eastern time, nope, completely flipped and changed. Not a hurricane at all. Going to come right on into the panhandle as a storm. And that's that. So here we were up here in Georgia dealing with the CNN balloon launch. And Debbie near about threw us a curveball. Luckily, in this case, the GFS was right. And Debbie got pulled into the trough. And it came into the Florida Panhandle. So here's the CNN balloon saga in pictures. This is Chris from CNN International, and there is the NOAA, National Weather Service Forecast Office in Peachtree City. We used their launch facility where they launch their weather balloon each day for their soundings at 12Z and 0Z. And here is the balloon payload that I built for them. And there's the APRS unit that Carrie provided in yellow. And just a couple things to note here. Look at how everything is zip-tied on, nice and tight to the internal structure of the payload, whether it's the aluminum crossbars or the wooden dowels for the basket, sort of the arms of it, the outriggers, if you will. Yeah, everything was pretty well put together, but then CNN, wanted it to be a cute story, so they asked me to put these plush toys. You can buy these in the CNN store. This is a satellite truck, and then here's a microphone flag with CNN International all over it, and that added some weird weight to it, and it's just like, come on. But, they were paying the bill to get there, so I figured, all right, and we'll see what happens. So it went up, and it worked flawlessly. Lots of reporters out there from all over the world. And there's the National Weather Service balloon. There's the fellow from the National Weather Service itself helping with the CNN balloon. Everything was ready to go, taped up inside. And Carrie assisted us with filling it up. And we were ready to go. They launched their sounding first. Within a second or two later, we let ours go. And we never saw it again. It went up to 66,000 feet. It burst, fell back to Earth. We tracked the spot locator, which is the orange piece of equipment. And let me just go back and show you that real quick. We found this right here, and this right here, and the cord and the parachute, but the rest of the cooler was nowhere to be found. This is still missing. This is a cell phone, the G1, that worked so well in the Texas launch. We found that. Wait till I show you where we found that. So off we go looking for it, into the woods, kind of near Sonoya in Griffin, Georgia. If you watch The Walking Dead, this is a lot of the area where they filmed season 3. And yeah, absolutely. So we're in there looking for the remnants of this balloon and all this thick woods, and this is when it started getting really hot. And you remember that? We had that big heat wave. I remember that. And we looked, and that was the forest that it landed in. I kid you not. And Carrie and I looked out at this. The CNN people vanished. They're like, you know what, forget it, we're out of here. But for Carrie and I, it was a lot more about finding it to prove that we could find it. Because we knew that if we lost Herbie, we're going to have to find it. Because if Herbie succeeds, wow, you know what I mean? You got to find that thing. I don't want to say it's the same as what Felix Baumgartner did, jumping out of the space, whatever it was, over New Mexico. That's a human being, obviously. You want to make sure he's okay. But that was pretty historic, what he did. And if we get the balloon up to the eye of a hurricane and into the edge of space, you're going to want to find that. So we had it, almost, maybe I was more stubborn than Carrie. We hiked across this field, and make no mistake, that's almost, half a mile away. And then I said it's only about 1,600 feet into this dense forest where I think it is. And that was the toughest 1,600 feet ever. It was horrible. We didn't find it that day. So we went over to where they filmed the opening scene of the Walking Dead series on AMC. And this is it's hard to see, this is the trashed parking lot of what is this gas station here, their outside area. I'm a big movie fan, and The Walking Dead is, I think, a great series, very realistic. I'm not a big zombie movie fan, but the way they do this, it's so well done. I dragged Carrie over there, and that's Frank Darabont. He directed The Shawshank Redemption. That's his autograph. And this is a picture of this place called Charlie's near somewhere in Georgia, where they filmed the opening scene. So we did a little bit of fanboy stuff. And then, a week later, we came back. We were going to find that sucker. This is where the G1 landed, right there. It fell at least 28,000 feet, all by itself probably. Came down, bam, landed in the yard here of the house of Justin and Kelly Garrett. He was out cutting his grass on June 23rd, and he saw the cell phone just laying in the dirt. He was like, well, how'd the heck this get here? And he turned it on, and it phoned home through the program that Paul put on it to do that. And so Paul says a couple hours after we lost it that day, hey, the phone, it's on, it's at some guy's house. So we went over with the sheriff and converged on this guy's house, and he was like, what the heck? And we told him, and he was like, yeah, come on, go look for it, the rest of it. So that's where we started back on June 23rd, and then we came back a week later, towards the very end of June into July, looking all through this area into these woods over here, and it was even hotter by like 6 or 7 degrees by this time. So this is an iPhone screen capture. We did some revisions, Paul's help included. This is the Flint River that goes through there. This is a little tributary, a little oxbow feature, and this is all that dense forest. And that blue dot is about where the APRS beacon almost precisely said that it was over and over and over again on June 23rd. It kept reporting that last position from there, and so that's where we searched, but we couldn't find it. And I think that the forest is just too dense, or maybe it's over on this little peninsula over here, whatever. But we gave it our all, we couldn't find it. So let's keep on moving. We gave up on that and started focusing on other items. So July goes through with not much going on, and then in August, right at the beginning of the month, starting at the peak of the hurricane season, you know how I talk about that ramp up. Lo and behold, here comes the disturbance that became Ernesto and some other tropical wave activity, these seedlings coming off. And Ernesto was, an eye-opener. Oh, here we go. I remember Bill Reed, former director of the National Hurricane Center, put on his Facebook page when he saw this. He said, gentlemen, start your engines, because it looked like this was the real deal. And here we go. And the thought was that this might be able to come through. You get the idea. And, a lot of people up here would just rather not see that. Instead, as we know, Ernesto came on into the Yucatan Peninsula area. But before we get to that, it was also at this point in time, early August, that Colorado State revised their forecast activity. This is after July 31st. And they were expecting 10 more named storms. We'd already had 4. And 5 more hurricanes. We'd already had 1. So that'd be a total of... So they were going for 14, 6, and 2. 2 major hurricanes. They were still wrong. I mean, what can you do, right? We had a lot. 19, 10, and 1. So we'll talk about how it all ended up in a minute. So anyway, at the same time Ernesto's trending out there, they had their forecast revision come out for a little bit more increase, naturally. Ernesto trying to look like a tropical cyclone, good banding features in there, central dense overcast was forming, large circulation envelope, still battling the dry air all around it. That was always an issue, that low instability. And it came on into the Yucatan, did not go up into the Gulf and threaten any of the Gulf Coast states, and so that was that. Not too big of a deal. Then we went on out to what was eventually Florence, and then Gordon. Another deep tropical development system became a hurricane. Gordon did, way out in the subtropics once again. This latitude line right here is 35 degrees north, so it was, it was north of 30 for goodness sakes. Then we had Helene, which came on similar path that Gordon did, and we're thinking, man, if the conditions weren't so hostile through here with this sinking air and dry air, boy, Helene had another shot at sort of replicating Dean and Felix in '07. What I mean by that, you have double landfalls within just a little bit of time. This is August 9th. Okay, remember, Ernesto came in just a few days before. So, but Helene fizzled out, never really amounted to anything. Then there was Isaac. And Isaac was the one, it looked like, for the year. Got a lot of people's attention. It was, a formidable looking system. It had potential. So this is the setup for Isaac. He had a pretty good area of high pressure sitting out here across the Atlantic. And these systems were not going to just curve out into a weakness anymore. They were going to come into the Eastern Caribbean and Central Caribbean at least. And then this trough would probably lift out, and you build the high end a little bit more, and then you open up the Southeast Gulf. That's what it was looking like, and that is in fact what happened. Early computer models, this is interesting. This is the GFS, and this was issued, looks like on August the 21st, and it was valid on the 28th. So the GFS, a week out, Isaac was way out here. It was showing Isaac as a, maybe a hurricane or something sitting right near Sarasota, Florida for a landfall. Of course, we know now that it came in down here in southeast Louisiana. So the global model at a week out, not horrible. I mean, that's a good stretch, between Sarasota and as the crow flies. You're not talking about land distance here. Not bad for a week out. If a week out, you could say that a box like this area right here needs to be thinking about dealing with a hurricane, and this way out here, that's pretty good. You can give people an alert on that, and that's in fact what I showed you if you were watching here. So the Euro, though, we'll show that later, I think. So Isaac, large circulation. It was huge in trying to really bundle all that energy. Still lots of dry air, though. That was a big problem for the development anyway. Then as time moved on, the GFS started shifting west with its landfall. It took it out of the peninsula, and now it was showing up here near Mobile, Pensacola area maybe. And the Euro was more west. So you had, sort of this duel going on again. It was crazy. So the forecast track from the Hurricane Center early on was near Mobile Bay. As we know now, it ended up in southeast Louisiana. And around the 24th or so, I left North Carolina and went down from the Wilmington area to Lake City, picked up Mike, and we met Carrie over in Gulfport, Mississippi. And there's a shot of the utility trucks already getting ready. Hotel room shot in Lake City. There's Mike Watkins and me cheesing for the camera. Our summer vacation with Mike and Mark. Make sure everything's running smoothly on the broadcast, by the way. And so we went on down to the Gulf Coast. This is the pier behind the yacht club, the yacht basin area, at Bay St. Louis, the Bay Waveland Yacht Club, where the Sentinel is located. Mike helping out to set up. And by the way, let's go back to this picture. Remember all this, okay? See how the water is? It's, there's the rocks, and the water's just trying to come up. There's Mike helping out with the setting up of the weather station, the wind and pressure and webcam. And there it is, set up on the Small Craft Harbor building. Carrie gave us these nice fiberglass poles that we could attach to just about anything, where we don't have to always worry about setting up that tower. Obviously, we knew that there was a storm surge coming in this area because we know Mississippi quite well. So setting up the tower down here in this little sandbar, the traffic island, that wouldn't have been a very good idea. So we put it up high, the storm case, as you saw there, Mike was working on it. That's up on the 3rd floor at least, I think. And this thing is up at 35 feet. It had great exposure, and boy, we got some really good wind data. And the webcam picture that this thing had, there's another perspective of it, was fantastic. This is the building. The wind tower is right there. I call it the tower. Whatever. The wind instrumentation, we attached it to the existing structure here. And then, of course, the cables fed up to the box, which is over here. How smart is that? I mean, come on, you got to give us some credit. That's pretty good. You know that this building, with the exception of a Katrina, is probably not going to get wiped out. And even in a Katrina, the stuff that's going to be gone is going to be all of this down here. They built it with steel reinforced concrete. You know, most of this is going to still be there. So instead of trying to put stuff down at ground level and figuring out how to get our tower up high, look at what you've got to use already and take advantage of it. And we got lucky because George, the harbor master, appreciates what we do, and he was helpful, let us do whatever we needed to do, and that is such a big part of our success. You know what I mean? I can't emphasize that enough. So his cooperation and assistance, Carrie helping out, Mike helping out, we got that thing set up, and we got some great wind data. There's a wonderful shot that Carrie took of the facility, and look, you can see it right there. There's the anemometer, and this is the hurricane sky starting to come in that night. Really, really nice shot. And the anemometer system, look how high up that is, folks. Perfect exposure to the wind. Not so much from the west, but that didn't matter. We wanted that north and east wind especially, and we had unlimited exposure. So Isaac started coming on in. We placed a remote camera out at the yacht club, as you might have remembered. And there's me going out there. I've got my iPhone, and I'm taking pictures and putting them on Twitter. And I'm walking through the storm surge to try to get up under here. And our case is up here on the second floor on the backside over there as all this water was coming up. We had a problem with it. There's always something that seems like is trying to go wrong. You have no idea how hard this is, with all the stuff that you got to keep up with. And I was not going to just let it not work if I could get out there safely. But there's a little bit of risk here. There could have been water moccasins or something in this water. I doubt it because it's brackish, but you never know. Maybe floating mats of fire ants or spiders, who knows what. And they're going to look at me as a safe refuge. Yuck. So I went out there and fixed the camera system. And then we went into New Orleans to the 17th Street Canal. And there's Mike helping out with this very heavy case as we labor along to try to set it up. And we got it done. Another fiberglass mast. See what I'm talking about? Use what you got. You see these vertical little supports here for the railing, and we just fasten the fiberglass to it, and then you got a nice shot looking out over the 17th Street Canal. Luckily for New Orleans, nothing really happened. The case survived. We went and picked it up the next day, and all was hunky-dory. Kerry took a lot of pictures. It was great having him do that to help us document. And the storm surge from Isaac was significant. We're a block or more in. And the Gulf is down here, and the roads were flooded. Everybody watching the live stream that day, you remember that. Remember that dock, that pier I told you about? Remember the shot of it? I was down here when I took the picture. This is where the rocks were. Yeah, look at that. So that's the St. Louis Bay, and there's the storm surge. This is when I went back to fix the camera. And then I took a shot of the Sentinel. We weren't able to get out there. It wasn't this rough, but it was too rough to get out there the day before and put the unit out there. And so we just put it onto the yacht club, and it streamed fantastic once I got it working again. Then more pictures from Highway 90 in that vicinity. Storm surge coming in. Wow, it was pretty rough. Felt bad for the folks in Mississippi. We know a lot of them very well. Aftermath shots here. Kerry took these. Lots of surge flooding, damage to the harbor, mostly to electrical systems and whatnot because of the mitigation built in and the smart rebuilding. And the fact that Isaac was not a 28-foot surge event, thank goodness. We got to walk with the mayor. There he is there, David Garcia. There's me and one of the police officers, and there's Mike. And we took a tour. Kerry's taking pictures. Kerry's like our press guy. Look at these big pieces of asphalt that are kicked up and deposited here by Isaac's surge. This is the Waveland Municipal Pier, and it looks like an earthquake hit it. This is all storm surge damage, folks. This is not from Katrina. This is a multi-million-dollar project after Katrina, and Isaac ruined it. As you can clearly see, this pier is not usable. They're going to have to demolish it and start over. Yet more funding. That is a rat. Thousands of these nutria rats came out of the swamps of Louisiana, drowned eventually and floated into the Mississippi Sound and landed on the beach and was a big mess. Carrie took some pictures of those things. I was morbidly fascinated with them. I thought that was a very strange thing because I don't know if nutria would be as prevalent without people, but this is a natural disaster, and you see these animals affected by it. You know, that's just the circle of life, I guess. I thought that was interesting that you can, that nature sometimes will lose, the thinning of the herd, that kind of thing. Then we went on into the fire department, the new fire department that Waveland built post-Katrina. There's a picture of the mayor on the left, me in the middle, Mr. Watkins on the right. And what a facility they have there. A couple of things to show you from the science that we gathered. August 28th, as it's coming in, we set up our camera, the camera at a low angle, sidewalk here, the parking lot area. Remember I talked about not putting the wind tower down here in the grass. Well, obviously that would have been a very bad mistake because the water came up 2 to 3 feet of actual water rise, maybe more, and you had rolling waves coming across that parking lot. So your before and after shots, see that? And so we move on. Joyce, out of the deep tropics again, everything heading out. Then there was Kirk, lots of jokes about Kirk. Then we had Leslie. Leslie prompted me to buy a plane ticket with the help of Kitty Code, who does the hurricane app. They were willing to help split the cost of me getting to Bermuda. I had people willing to help out, but I just had this terrible feeling the night before that I was supposed to leave, that Leslie would come up and miss Bermuda by a wide shot, and that I'd be wasting a lot of resources, and it was on a weekend. And I mean, it's just a lot of logistics going to that, and hurricanes on the weekend when they're not a big deal to the U.S., are hard enough. But in Bermuda, it just didn't seem like a good idea. And I know they sent Jim Cantori out there from the Weather Channel, and there were some squalls or whatever, but it would have been a phenomenal expense for not much gain at all. Maybe a little experience is great, but at what cost? Who knows, right? And very stressful time to think about it and all that. So I didn't go. Maybe in the future we'll get an international mission. I do have a passport, but it wasn't meant to be. Then we had Michael, and it was a Category 3 hurricane, if I remember correctly, the only one of the year, staying well out to sea. Moving right down the list. Then there was interesting, if we look at the satellite picture at this time, look at all the dry, sinking air everywhere. Very dry air. There's a slug of moisture coming up here from a frontal boundary. This is September 7th. You see Leslie here moving on up. It became like a big cinnamon roll. More extratropical looking than anything. Lots of dry air intrusion in it. And this was really the mark of the season, and Mike talked about that. Maybe some sinking air coming in from the ill-attempted El Nino event, who knows. Then we had Nadine, which its track, as you remember, it was like, woo, okay, I'm going to go over here, then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come over here some more. And Nadine stayed out there for a long time. Then we had Oscar, short-lived mostly. And then we had Patty, and it was very short-lived as well. And then Raphael, another system that looked like it might affect Bermuda, maybe even the Canadian Maritimes area, but it faded east enough. And then there was Sandy. And Sandy just had that look to it. The time of year, we were coming up on 7 years since Wilma, and Mike and I have been talking for the last 7 years that we thought something would come out of the Caribbean here and bite Florida and the you-know-what. That's typically where the worst hurricanes will come from over history. And this looked like it just might do the trick. And close, but no cigar, luckily. There was also some speculation that it might do like Hazel did, where Hazel came in, kind of crossed, and then came up and did sort of like this. High pressure built in and forced Hazel back into North Carolina, and eventually it ended up in Ontario. So Sandy had a huge envelope of energy, a very favorable MJO pattern. You remember how much I talked about that. Watch the MJO, watch the MJO, watch it, watch it, watch it, wait for it, boom, it happened. Very, very good predictor for this particular burst of activity that led to Raphael, Sandy, and eventually Tony out here. So Sandy became, obviously, one of the most epic storms of all time. I remember on the 21st, I think it was, Monday the 21st, I posted a blog that said, Sandy, a storm for the ages, ? Perhaps, was the title, and it got the most likes on Facebook, I think, of any post I did. I think several thousand, and it was a very widely read blog post as I discussed what Sandy could do based on the GFS, which showed it coming up and then scooting harmlessly out to sea, versus the Euro, which showed it coming up and kind of doing one of these numbers. And everybody was just like, there's no way that'll happen. You know, it's just crazy. And we watched and we waited, and sure enough, the GFS, this is on the, when is this? The 23rd, I think? No, it's 22nd, sorry. You can see it's got it pretty far out. And you remember these broadcasts, this wasn't that long ago. This was 6 days out, okay, so that would be on the 29th. So yeah, the 22nd plus 6 is the 28th, I'm sorry. They had it way out here, well to the southeast of Cape Hatteras. We all know what happened, it came in up here. The Euro, at the same time frame, had it right there off the coast of Florida. A little slow, it was certainly faster than what these models were showing, but the Euro had the right track, and it finally caught on that Sandy would become what we now know is one of the most epic storms in the United States history. And the tropical versus extratropical debate and the post-tropical and the hurricane warnings and all that is outside of my realm of expertise in terms of, I don't have a voice in that, so to speak. It doesn't matter. My stage isn't big enough, my audience, if you will. I was there to document the effects on the people. And I did so first on the Outer Banks with Jesse Bass. If he's watching, he'll shoot me. What's he doing, you have to ask? He is cleaning the windows of the Tahoe, which badly needed them. And I posted a picture of this on Twitter, and I used Siri, and I said, Jesse Bass cleaning the windows of the Tahoe, and it sent it up to Twitter as cleaning the windows of the taco. I thought that was funny. How modern technology, first world problems, right? So Jesse accompanied me, helped me out setting up equipment in Kill Devil Hills. We went down to Hatteras, shot some pictures, and this is a still shot from the iPhone video that I did. I have to start really working on this and tweaking it and using it as a tool, extracting images from the video that I shoot for those video blogs that I post to the app. That's not bad, and if I can work on it and process it better, it'd be pretty incredible. This is at the S-Curves area in Merlot Beach. The sign from Merlot Beach is right there, and we're actually heading north here in this shot. And this is Saturday evening near sunset, and the beginning of what we now know. And this haunts me, it does, because this is all destroyed now. This is gone, it's ruined. The houses are there, but these houses right here, see how there's beach and dunes? These guys now are in the water. All of this dune line is gone. It's not a little gone, it's all the way gone. Unbelievable. I wanted to make sure I showed pictures that were only from us, so I didn't pull in any aerial shots or like whatever, because this is about what we did. So we're riding through here and the surge is already coming in, or the overwash, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's surge, even though the hurricane was like 250 miles off the coast. This was really, really remarkable. And so I grabbed that from the still shot from the video. So we set up a camera system, the wind tower and whatnot, at this house that's owned by the Hauntons in Kill Devil Hills. No, that's not snow, not on October 28th. That is the storm surge doing its dirty work. Unbelievable. You can see what it was doing there, 8 o'clock in the morning. Very bad situation for the Outer Banks. We collected the equipment, Jesse was a real trooper helping me out to lug this stuff around in the cold, cold rain and very strong wind blowing 40 to 50 miles per hour right on the beach. And then I had headed out of the area and started making my way up to New Jersey. And I got up to Belmar and Long Branch in that area, and I had a meeting pulled in sort of impromptu with the town officials. This guy here, his name is Bill Young. He is the borough administrator. And then you've got different emergency responders and whatnot. This is their EOC. All right? It's a gymnasium. There's basketball goals. There's their tables. This is their emergency operations center. A gym. That's right. So they asked me to tell them what to expect. What's happening, Mark? And I used my iPhone. You might know the story by now. And I gave them a briefing. And I helped them. I told them what to look forward to, and that right now they're going to stand around with their thumbs in their rear ends. But after landfall and that surge comes in, their lives will never be the same. And I gave them a play-by-play, and they were very, very impressed. And, you know, it was really remarkable to be able to help somebody out like that who I had never met and I had no affiliation with, and to be able to just kind of guide them through what to expect. I think at least armed them with something. They weren't going in it blind, so that was a nice contribution. So then I went on out and started documenting, and the surge was just filling up the streets of New Jersey, the Ocean Boulevard, Ocean Avenue, whatever. Bad situation. This is another still shot from the iPhone video. Look at this. It's hard to see, I know, but that's the dune, and the ocean is pouring over the dune and spilling in, and then it's also happening up here, and all that water was flowing down the road and headed towards the Shark River and this inlet that was farther down, and it was filling up the Shark River and the bay back there. And I told them, I said, man, this surge is coming in. I emailed them. I was their eyes out there. They pulled in some of their police officers and let them rest, and I stayed out there and gave them these reports over email to Bill. And I said, that surge is coming in. I'm really, really worried about those houses along the Shark River. And he said, you know, very briefly, all of his responses were brief. We didn't have time for novels writing back and forth. He would just say thank you. You know, he knew what the intel was, and it was really amazing to be able to contribute that information to them, and they were prepared. So I got to meet the governor. That's the mayor, not the governor. Matt Doherty, that's the mayor. The governor of New Jersey is over in that crowd back there. I got to meet the mayor and the governor, and it was really amazing. And I made some good friends up there. Hope to see them again sometime. Then I went on out, back to Long Branch to retrieve the equipment. The wind tower was set up at Long Branch at the Monmouth Beach Club in the parking lot, and there was nothing left. I mean, it was all gone. This is like a foot of sand where the parking lot was. The beach club basically destroyed, certainly the lower levels and the front side of it. The last picture that the tower cam recorded, that's the beach house right there, the big building, and there's that surge coming in that you can see. And so that is that. Pretty remarkable. Just gone. Wiped it all out. This is looking to the north, and you can see the absolutely incredible damage and the erosion that it caused. You know, just pounding waves, surge coming in, blasting everything out. So it erased everything that the camera system was attached to. What about the streaming camera? You might remember that Mark from New Jersey at exit 109, he helped me attach the, at least get the case out. There was a bike rack that was sitting right here. It was that curly bike rack that looks like that, and then it's embedded into the concrete. And I put one of those fiberglass poles on it, and the camera angle was looking out this way. You might remember that, yeah? Big waves coming up over this thing. It was pretty remarkable. Well, look what's left. It's just, the case, we now suspect, was buoyant enough, and it was chained to the bike rack, and the waves were able to just rip the whole thing out of the concrete, and it moved it like half a block back behind me. So yeah, we're gonna have to do something about that. And here's another look at the area. Just lots and lots of damage, storm surge, flooding. You know what? I don't want to see yellow tape like you see right there. I don't want to see yellow tape blocking my route ever again. I was so sick of yellow tape and cones not letting me go somewhere. Ugh, it was a real nightmare. Knowing people in the area is paramount to being able to do what we need to do. And we know most everybody from Florida. We just didn't have that advantage up in New Jersey. What can I say? No experience up there. So a couple of before and after shots. I can't say that I had some vacation photos. This is from Google. You can see the Google image thing there embedded in the watermark. So this is Ocean Avenue in Belmar before Sandy, and there's the same area after. This is taken from digital video. Very, very destructive force that the storm surge did up there, as we all know. Couple of before and after shots from the wind tower cam, really showing what happened. The parking lot here all intact, and then boy, that surge was coming in. Bad, bad news. Not a good scene for folks up there. So why did it happen? Basically, you had Sandy coming in, and instead of it paralleling the coast like this, or even coming up like that, where the water would kind of go along the coast, Sandy, as you know, came in and then turned and came back. And so, and I showed you this before I ever even left North Carolina. I talked about this. There's your continental shelf. So the water out here is much deeper than it is here. The wind was all blowing onshore the whole time, coming up here, onshore, 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 onshore. Then the hurricane, superstorm, whatever, came in and bulldozed all that water right up into that area. Well, I just don't know what people thought was going to happen. And that's why I got upset and talked about politicians staying out of it. The mayor of New York talking about something that he had no business talking about. The New York Bight up here, this is a disaster waiting to happen. And that book Chris was talking about, Land Strike, talks about that. And so Sandy, a 90-mile-an-hour superstorm, hurricane, whatever, just pushed all that water up into the New York Bight, and it sandwiched it up here, much like Ike did. And I talked about this over and over and over before it happened. And there you go, that's what happened. As far as what happened in New York itself, and in the Rockaways out towards Freeport, you had Long Island Sound with the wind coming around the hurricane. So the Long Island Sound got pushed down into here, and it filtered its way in around Manhattan. Then you had the water getting pushed in front of the hurricane itself up into the Raritan Bay, and that funneled the water all the way up into Manhattan. I just don't know what people thought was supposed to happen. Where does the surprise part come in? And I hate to take it lightly, but my goodness, it was said, advisory after advisory, hurricane warning or not, deadly storm surge is headed your way. That's what people should have taken away from this. Forget everything else. You need to look at the worst effect. If you sit down with somebody and you say, if I do this, what's the worst thing that'll happen? And then they tell you the answer, and it's really bad. Well, the worst thing that'll happen is, okay, if I go out and I rob a bank, what's the worst thing that'll happen? You're going to go to jail, for 40 years. Well, that's pretty bad. What are some other things that might happen? Well, you'll probably lose your house. You'll be in the newspaper. You'll be on TV. You'll be a criminal. You'll have a felony record. Those are all further down the list, I would think, secondary to going to prison for 40 years, okay? And so you wouldn't say, well, yeah, the prison part, I'm going to ignore that. It's, what about this whole thing about, being in the paper? I don't know if I want to, screw that. You need to worry about going to jail for 40 years, so don't rob the bank. Weird analogy, I know, but you get the idea. The surge was what they were talking about on the Hurricane Center's forecast advisories. And whether or not they should have had hurricane warnings up for this area, I have no idea if that would have helped or not. People should have been talking about the storm surge, and that's what I did. And I at least got a few people in the town of Belmar a hair better prepared. So there you have it. Enough about Sandy. We will see what happens with the fallout over the coming months and years. After Sandy, there was Tony, and then that was it. We didn't have anything else, thank goodness. So, where do we go from here? Well, this is the sea surface temperature anomalies as of today, and in the Atlantic and the tropics out here, running quite a bit above normal. Well above normal up here in the Gulf Stream of the Northwest Atlantic. Churned up waters and whatever all through here. This will change next summer. That'll definitely rebound. A bigger piece of the puzzle lies out here, and this is what we'll track in the off-season. Kind of warm out here, not El Nino, but the warm side of neutral, we'll call it. So we'll watch in the off-season when I do the discussions once a week. What goes on out here, and what's going on out here. And if this cools off to even, moderately cool, and this stays as warm as it is now, and then starts to warm up back through here, we'll probably be in for a very long season next year in terms of impact to land. Not just the United States, but all around the Caribbean and etc. We're just not seeing the strong winds coming across the Atlantic, the trades, cooling off all this water out here, creating upwelling. So the pattern continues of a warmer than normal Atlantic and a neutral to just slightly warmer than neutral Pacific. And I can show you that on the subsurface maps here. We'll watch this every month as we go through the off season. This is July. Yeah, it was warm out there. You're looking at a cross section of the Pacific Ocean here, and the eastern Pacific's on this side, the western Pacific's over here. The surface is at the top, 300 or 400 meters is at the bottom. And you got all this warm water that was looming near the surface. And then in August, it really started to shed that warmth. September, it was neutral, absolutely, positively neutral. Now, a cold pool is developing in October. You've shed all that warm water out of there, very little warm water. Look at all the deep warm water here. Nowhere to be found in October. It'll be interesting to see what November shows. And that's one of the things that I will talk about in each of the weekly outlooks that I do. All right? So we'll be watching that, and we'll see what the first forecast for next year is by Dr. Klotzbach and Dr. Gray. The El Nino forecasts from the different models, all of these represent ensemble members, a whole bunch of different models run with different variables. But the average, the mean here from the Australian Poema model, neutral, literally neutral is right there, 0. And this shows a steady decline towards neutral by the time we get into July and August of next year. Very interesting. On the other hand, the American-based CFS Climate Forecast System version 2, whatever that means, plummeting for a while and then back up towards El Nino sometime next year. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see the signals. The Euro, some of the ensembles show a march back towards El Nino, but the Euro really blew it this year. It was the most bullish. It had a whole bunch way up here for a while. The models aren't very good, honestly, for this far out. So we'll just watch it on a week-to-week basis. So, what do we do for next year? We're going to keep moving forward. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to think smaller. Not getting rid of personnel smaller. That's not the kind of smaller I mean. We need to miniaturize the equipment. Get those remote cameras smaller. Get the weather station stuff smaller. The obvious, the anemometer or whatever has to be a certain size, obviously, but the box needs to be smaller. So we're going to start working on that. I know what to do. We just need the funding to do it. So we're working on that. We're going to have everything smaller, and I want to have it the size of a briefcase. And so I don't have to lug those huge storm case boxes around. Neither does Mike carry, Mark from New Jersey at exit 109, or whoever else happens to help us out. I want to be able to have these things all fit in one box, a whole bunch of them in one box in the Tahoe, and have more room for stuff like gas cans and food and clothes and survival stuff, okay? Technology is there to shrink our systems and get them smaller, so we're going to work on that. And, part of it's funding for research and development, and then a part of it is just doing it and getting it done. In addition, we're going to definitely keep working on the Herbie project and get that ready. Again, might even test it at some point, funding allowing, and we're working all that. Working on all that now. We definitely want to be the first ones to put that payload into the eye of a hurricane, get it to 100,000 feet, and retrieve it, and see what we got. I still think that would be the pinnacle. Wow. I mean, that would just be, that'd be it. You know, I try not to get too excited about it, because it could keep me up at night. As far as the app, didn't talk about that. Some of the screenshots are from the app. We have the ability, we believe, to add live video to the app. Yay! Through Ustream, everybody would see it. It wouldn't be something that we would charge for. So people who have the app on iPhone, we should be able to put the Tahoe Cam in the app. I'm also going to be able to have a way to do the Tahoe Cam separately so that Ustream and the public can watch a version without having to have a separate laptop. It's all detailed and technical, but we have a way to do it now where I don't have to have 2 laptops, 2 cameras, and whatever. We know how to do it. So we're going to stream on Ustream, and we're going to stream on client services ad-free. And I think we know how to do that and provide everybody with something. And then, of course, our subscribers will get the ad-free multiple camera content and the Storm Pulse maps and the chat and the daily updates, etc., etc. We also want to add some computer models and other things like that we're working on. And, of course, an Android version. It's costly, though. It's going to be about $4,500 minimum just to get an Android version done, because the people that we work with, they're not amateurs. You know, they are dedicated programmers at a firm that's going to be there to support this for years to come. It's not just a guy, you know, in his room somewhere, and now he's got to go manage whatever fast food restaurant, and I can't get him for support. When we had problems, I was able to call them, and they were working on stuff. It costs money, but, you know, it's the way it goes. If we get these apps running, they should start to make good money, and then we can really start to fund some of our bigger projects, like getting a new vehicle and upgrading our equipment, etc. Basically, next year looks really good. Wide open, lots of good ideas, and we got a great member base, and wonderful momentum on this year to build upon. And we'll be working on it during the off season, so tune in when you, let's see, each Monday, I'm trying to think of how I'm going to do this, starting this coming Monday will be the first one, 2 p.m. Eastern Time each Monday is the goal. Basically once a week I'm going to do a live update. I'll record it, put it in the archives, and keep you up to date on the big climate signals for next year's hurricane season. Hopefully pull in some graphics once in a while from Mike of things that he's looking at. And then we'll keep an eye out for big disruptive weather systems. A lot of people like snow and big snowstorms. We'll be on the watch for that. Severe weather outbreaks, things of that nature. And we'll always be active on the chat. It's not like at midnight tomorrow night, that's it, and I don't see you again until May. We have a lot going on in the off season, and it's not every day, but we do stay active, and so I encourage you to check in from time to time. And before you know it, it'll be next May, and we'll be ready to go again, you know? So we'll stay on top of things in the off season and work on the things that we need for next year. And that is about it. I will end things with a huge thank you from all of us, you know, as a group. Everybody that participated and helped out in so many remarkable ways, not just with the funding, but with the encouragement, the help on navigation from time to time, the offers of, you know, you can stay at my house if you need to, you name it. It just means so much. You know, I'm in the driver's seat because I started all this as my business and my dream 15 years ago, but I got a great support group, both of made up of guys that work with me in the field, behind the scenes, my family, of course, the people at CNN that try to help out, and then, of course, all of the members, some of which have been able to step up and contribute significantly, which is a very, very big help, because we don't have a singular large corporate partner. Okay, we lost that a few years ago with Lowe's, and we've been trying to reinvent things so we don't have to worry about one paycheck each year, and if that goes away, oh, I'm in a catastrophe again. Kind of like diversifying your portfolio, right? And so it's working, and we're still here, and we've done some remarkable things. And think about everything that I showed you, that was all just since this time last year. Most of it from May through the end of October. That's pretty remarkable, and you guys were all a part of it. And most of you, everybody that was a member helped to make it happen. That is truly, truly unique for what we do here at HurricaneTrack.com. You know, there's lots of other sites out there. Some of them do live streaming, radio type broadcast stuff, and that's wonderful. And that's a totally different thing. But what we have here, I think, is truly unique, even among other storm chasers. Some of them very famous and on television. But I think what we've got is similar, but all in all of itself, because we were one of the first, if not the first, to pioneer it all the way back in '05 with the live portion. Just look at how far we have come. And now that we're looking at miniaturizing stuff and having more of it and broadening out into the app platform, man, we're going to have a reinvention like you've never seen. And I'm going to leave you with one little teaser. I am going to be working on something related to the documentary, that's all I'll say, that should be ready hopefully in March, and no later than May. May is like my big drop deadline for stuff, May 1st. I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger. I got something I'm working on that'll be really, really neat. And I think a lot of people are going to like it. And that's what's going to keep me busy over the next 3 or 4 months, quietly. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You can get mad at me all you want. But it's going to be really, really cool. And I can't wait to tell you what it is, because that's my cliffhanger. You know, it's like a TV show. The mid-season finale. That's what this is. So stay tuned, because something wonderful is going to happen next year, and I can't wait to share it with you. So from myself and Mike Watkins and Jesse Bass and all the people that have been helping out, Greg this year, all the time he put in to help, we all appreciate it. Have yourselves a great off-season. We're not going anywhere. We'll see you at least once a week, and on the chat probably frequently. Keep you updated on things. We'll be testing stuff as we work on this new technology. Finally, if anybody says, you know, I got an extra X amount of dollars laying around, I got a big giant bonus I wasn't expecting, get in touch with us. Send some of that funding our way, and we can make some of these things happen earlier. But honestly, in the end, we appreciate everything that everybody has done. Collectively, you've made it happen. And that's all that we could ask for. So have a great one. Thanks for joining us this season. We will officially see you in the 2013 season, but between now and then, we'll pop in for those weekly updates. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll see you on Monday as we start our off-season discussions.